it's about your media and just the time that takes to make the stuff versus what you get. And that's one of those weird things. When I was doing a bunch of mobile games, I had like family and friends. These are people that love me and care for me, complaining about having to spend 99 cents in an app store for the game, and were asking me why can't it be free.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox.Space Weekly Podcast. This is episode 60, I believe. I think it is. I am your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby, who's in my lap, Pumpkin, who's over there about to knock everything off my desk. And of course, every week we have a special guest. This week's guest is Henry Bawden. Welcome back to the show, Henry.
Hello.
Awesome. So before we start, a couple quick things. GDEX related, our volunteer applications are live. I have not put the link up yet, so I'm going to do that after the show here. But the volunteer applications for GDEX 2025 are live. So if you're interested in volunteering, we could certainly use the help. Henry is our volunteer coordinator for GDEX, so you'll be working with him. Also, exciting announcement, we are partnering with CorgsCon this year, the Central Ohio Retro Gaming Society. We're partnering with them, so we're going to do a joint show. So 2 shows for one price. So that's pretty exciting. I've been wanting to do something with Gary from Corgs for a long time. And seems like a good year to do it. So they needed some help finding space, and we had some extra space. So we're like, all right, let's see what we can do. So that's exciting. And then thirdly, Mr. Bawden, you are releasing a new book here soon.
Oh, yeah. Let me pull out the stuff. So, yeah, April 25th, I've got Gerald's Quest coming out. So it will go live on Amazon for the hardcover and softcover. The hardcover is color, and the softcover is just black and white illustrations. But Marcelo went above and beyond on this book. He's got over 50 illustrations in it, so it's amazing. But yeah, that'll go live on April 25th. The Nook, Kindle, and Google Play versions of the book, the ebooks, are available for pre-order right now. And then if you haven't yet, you can also check on Amazon and those others for my original book, my debut novel, Amelia Splint and the Doorway to Hope. So, yeah.
Got my copy.
Cool.
I just realized that I think my thing is reversed, my camera, now that I look at this text. So
I don't know. Looks straight to me, but it always flips. So
yeah,
we'll figure it out.
So, sorry, sweetie. Yeah, that's exciting, man. I haven't read your first book. It's on my list. I think I'm gonna try to get to it next. So I'm excited to get to your hard copy version of your next book. Yeah, your most recent book is more for younger kids, right?
Yeah. The original one, Amelia Splint, was a young adult contemporary fantasy. This one is more middle grade. So, 5th grade through 7th grade. But even my first grader and kindergarten, or my second grader now and kindergartner children can read it just fine. So, yeah, good for all ages.
Awesome. All right, Henry, you want to get down to business?
Sure.
Okay. So the first thing that we were going to talk about, this is actually kind of exciting. I think we're going to have an all Switch 2 episode. And so I wanted to bring you on both as someone who's been in the games industry, also a teacher, but a lot of the things we're going to talk about, I think, are going to directly impact sort of families. And as a man with many children, I think you qualify as a family. So we are going to have some interesting conversations, I think. So let's start out. This is just from Polygon. This is their everything we know about the Switch 2, Nintendo's next-gen console. So they update this pretty frequently, but the important part is, I'm going to go ahead and take this off. The important part is that last week, Nintendo had a Switch 2 event, detailed a lot of cool stuff, a lot of games, but they also released the price. So the price is coming in, Pumpkin, kill me. The price is coming in at $450. Now, we are going to talk about all the tariffs and stuff, because after Nintendo gave its press conference, Trump
Yeah.
also did his big tariff thing. So we'll talk about that. But for right now, let's just assume that the Switch 2 is going to remain at $450. It's quite a big jump over the current $300 that the current Switch is. So Henry, I'm curious your initial thoughts on this pricing strategy.
I think that they've just had to take it up. I think a big part of it is that they are finally updating a lot of their hardware. If you've been looking at the specs at all, it's going to handle higher resolution. It's going to have more memory. It's going to have better processing speeds. They're talking, the higher frame rates running from it.
Yeah.
Also, they've got to have things running fast enough. Everything I've seen in the release is really, really centered around online play. And so I think that just kind of reflects it. Also, just the cost of everything going up, just the current inflation. So for me, that's not really that big of a stretch. That puts it kind of in line with the other systems and what they've been costing. So
yeah, your PS5 is going to be $500. PS5 Pro is $700.
Yeah. So I think they're still under what the competition is, but it obviously needed to go up someplace.
Yeah.
So honestly, I'm not too worried about that. I think it's kind of fair for what they're trying to put out right now.
Yeah, I there's a couple interesting things in it. Obviously, you can look at the tech specs, bigger screen, OLED. You mentioned the frame rate; it goes up to 120 FPS. And I don't remember exactly what the resolution is. They say it's HDR. It has HDR support, which I thought was an interesting phrasing of that.
Well, what it is, I believe it's the. Now I gotta look up the specs. So it's smaller on the actual screen. It's better than it was, but when you've got it docked, then it's supposed to go up to 4K. So,
got it. We'll see. So I think it was very interesting.
Yeah.
We got some folks here. I gotta move covering up my chat. I do think it's interesting. 450. It's the Switch has gotten itself, or Nintendo, I guess, in general, has gotten itself off cycle from the other two, PlayStation and Xbox. And we've talked a lot about how Xbox might not even be making consoles in the future. So you can go back to some previous episodes and watch that. But, for $450, it seems like you got a pretty decently strong device. There's people saying it's not as good as the Steam Deck, and I think we'll kind of need to see what that actually looks like in practice, because I don't think it's quite an apples to apples comparison.
No.
But they did make some pretty big power moves this time, where, over the past, but the Wii U, and the Switch, neither of those, so the past three consoles, and you could argue even the GameCube and the N64 were not sort of competitive on a power perspective against PlayStation and Xbox. So I think it is intriguing that they must have noticed that, my guess, if I had to have a guess, is they probably noticed that they were just not getting as much third-party support as they wanted, because it was just moving from PlayStation 5 to Switch was just too much of a computational downgrade that it was really hard for third-party developers. That would be my guess. I don't know what you think.
That's kind of what I'm feeling, because even with some of the games, they're talking about this will still only play at about 30 frames, and this one they're trying to get to 60 frames. So yeah, it can process at a higher speed, but there's a lot of really powerful games that it's essentially creating a whole other game when they have to downgrade to the Switch when they're doing these larger titles. So I don't know. A number of years ago, I played Witcher 3 on the Switch. And they did a good job. They were still able to get a lot of resolution, but it was obviously a very hefty downgrade. And so for developers, that's a lot of extra cost and time to get somebody on the team to do the lower res models, to do the lower res versions of the textures. It's not just something that can be automatically done in most cases. You have to actually make custom assets for this platform to get it to work. And so it was good, but yeah, I would imagine a lot of the larger games have been shying away from the Switch because of that. And I think Nintendo wants a piece of some of those larger projects.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I do think it's interesting that the Switch has the install base on the Switch is very large. And there's right now the PlayStation 2 is still the best-selling console, but the Switch and the PS5 are kind of like maybe gonna supplant it, possibly. Now with the Switch 2 coming out in June 5th here, maybe not, but my larger thing is with such a large install base, like the incentive is there from a financial perspective to make your games, but the developer costs to doing, like you said, making like these super low poly models that would be able to work on it. I shouldn't say super low, but lower poly models.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a game like The Witcher, that is not a small task. You know, like that is a huge game.
That had to have been a horrendous task to get it to work.
There's a ton of assets, and I think isn't Cyberpunk coming out on the Switch?
It's coming out. That was one of the announced ones, and that one blows my mind a little bit because no matter how much they down-res it, that's a big title. Like that's a hefty one. Even Hogwarts Legacy, they were talking about bringing it out. That one's a powerhouse too. That one takes up a lot of processing. Even on my PC, I got a gaming PC that the family uses, and it struggled on Hogwarts Legacy. So I ended up just buying a copy for the PS5 so that we could play through it. But I mean, it got our PC chugging pretty heavy, and so to get it working on the Switch, they either really amped up the Switch more than I thought they did, or they're going to have to still do some down-resing and some other ways to get it functional. But that was the one that they specifically pointed out, like, it's still only going to be at 30 frames a second. There's no way for them to optimize it enough to bring it up to 120. So...
Yeah, I am not convinced. Maybe I'm a little cynical in my old age here, Henry, but I am not convinced that many games are going to run at 120 frames. Like,
no,
I think, and
honestly, most of them don't need to. If you can get 30 to 60 frames a second, that's a good milestone.
Yeah, I'm playing the Path of Exile 2 beta because the new season dropped. I should say I'm playing as in I've spent 30 minutes on it because I'm so busy. But I noticed they have like a higher frame rate on it now. So I'm running on my PS5 Pro. I'm running between like 90 to 100 frames per second, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But I just don't. You think about something like Cyberpunk. Like that game notoriously did not function well on the PS4 and the Switch, even the Switch 2. I don't think the Switch 2 is that big of a jump over the PS4. I mean, it is, but not that big. So,
no,
I don't know. But we'll see. Digital Foundry, I always watch their breakdowns, their tech breakdowns. I haven't watched theirs yet. So the $450 price point as a family purchase, how do you feel about that?
I still think it's good, and we're probably going to get it. Maybe not right off the bat, but it's something that we'll definitely be looking at to get in the next year or so. Because right now, my kids play the crap out of the Switch. Yeah, we obviously have the Xbox, we've got the PS4, PS5, we've got every one of the old systems. My kids are oddly enough going back to the N64 games at the moment, playing through a lot of those.
Nice.
So I mean, we've got a lot of games around the house, but the Switch is still kind of the family connective one, and especially for the younger kids, even though they do play on some of the other systems, the Switch is the easy one to just hop on, connect with friends. And it's also, it's just, like I said, it's just accessible. And for my family, I got 7 kids. And so finding games that are, the 8-player games is hard. But we can do Smash Brothers. We can do Bomberman and stuff on the Switch. And then we got some other stuff we set up as well. But it just becomes more functional. And that was one of the things that I noticed with the Switch that they were heavily pushing was the social side. They've got the camera now. They've got, it looks like fairly seamless controls to not only play the game, share your screens, do the online stuff. The original Switch did some of that, but now you can do like the person on screen with your background. Like they're just making it all easier to do.
Yeah.
Which for my family is great. And then immediately after that, because I was starting to get words like, well, but if they're now sharing faces and stuff like that, Nintendo's been all about that, the protections for children and the controls. At the end of that, then it's like, oh, and by the way, here's all the parental controls, all these features, you can shut off account by account, which is great because we're paying for the family account. So we've got essentially 8 users on the Switch. But I can pick which of my children's accounts I can limit so that, they're not getting into trouble or anything as they're playing. So,
yeah.
I don't know. For me, I think it's going to be worth it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think $450 is I mean, it's a lot, but for a system that supposedly is going to be backwards compatible with. I mean, I think they do a GameCube announcement on it where they're trying to bring a lot of the GameCube games. So you're looking at possibly, and it not the entire Nintendo library of the past 30 years, 35 years, but it's going to be a significant from Nintendo up through GameCube plus the Switch. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of games, man, for $450.
Yeah. And that's just it. For the $450 for the amount of playtime we're going to get, it's going to be worth it. And that's where, for even for me, I hold off on a lot of these console releases simply because they don't have a library that makes it worth it for me to spend the money. I'm not going to play it that much. As you mentioned, we're busy. We don't have time to jump on and play all the time. And so I usually wait a year or two before I get, the PS5. And usually I get whatever the upgrade is when they finally do, because then it runs better, has more memory and everything. But the Switch is one that the Switch 2 is one that I'll probably get pretty quick, simply because of the amount of play that it's going to get. And I'm loving a lot of the new features that they're bringing out as well. Our current Switch, my kids play the crap out of that. Where the Joy-Cons slot on the sides, doesn't even recognize the Joy-Cons anymore. That part's gone bad. So having the clip-in is wonderful. That means that part will function again. Usually we have to pull, if they're playing it just with the Switch itself, they have to pull it out, set it down, then play the Joy-Con separately with it propped up against something. That little back latch on it, that broke off within the first half year. A lot of the Joy-Cons are having trouble connecting anymore, so every time we start trying to play, I have to manually go in and reconnect all the Joy-Cons. And so there were some issues that, especially in my family, where it's getting so much use, that we found, and the Switch 2 looks like it's going to fix all those and add some new features. So you mentioned like Microsoft may not be doing another Xbox. They're kind of pulling out of that market. We're dealing with more Steam Deck stuff. I think it was a genius move now they're pushing the PC games on the Switch to kind of take over that space as well, where the Joy-Con now acts as a mouse. So you can do mouse-based games on the Switch too. So a lot of those other features as well, in addition to making the system better and all this stuff, is great. My only concern price-wise is really going to be how much do the controllers cost? Because the system itself, that was fine. We paid the money for the Switch, but I've got 10 sets of Joy-Cons. 10 Joy-Cons, so 5 sets, simply because we have to have at least 8 at a time for these big family games and another set charging at all times. And so we burn through a lot of Joy-Cons. And that doesn't come cheap. I mean, those are, $75, $80. Lucky if you can get them on sale for maybe $70, $75. But it's expensive. And so that's where the real price kind of hurts us. So I haven't heard any announcements on what the new controller prices are going to be, but
I'm scanning through right now. I don't see anything on the controller price, so that is a good thing. So I think overall $450. My thing is I've got the Animal Crossing Special Edition Switch, and it's been sitting over there on my chair, unplugged from my TV for like 9 months. So like I just don't feel like I got the time. Even though there's great games, like I want to go back and play Mario RPG. That's one of my favorite games of all time. I want to go back and play that. I haven't played Chat. They're mentioning here, Caleb and Tom are talking about Tears of the Kingdom. I haven't played that. I did play Breath of the Wild and I beat it. I wasn't as wowed. Like from a gameplay perspective, I think that game is incredible, but it didn't grab me from like a narrative kind of story world perspective. But so stats wise, I mean, I think it's pretty good. $450 is a decent price, which now brings me to the question: what if it gets impacted by tariffs and becomes $600? And the estimates are like, given the current given the current tariffs of 2 days ago, which are now doubled, because we're, as we speak, 104% tariffs are being levied on China right now. That would put this at about $630 before the new tariffs. Does that number change your calculations?
A bit, yeah. And honestly, I'm waiting to see how that shakes out. I don't know. I don't know what the end goal is. I've heard both sides of the tariff issue of this is why they're good, this is why they're not good. Here's the goal: is not to keep the tariffs, but to get them to drop tariffs on us. And it's just,
Can I let
I
you
don't
in
know
on a
how
little
it's going to
secret?
shake out. I don't think what. Sure, go for it.
Can I let you in on a little secret here? There is no fucking plan. The Trump administration does not have a plan for these.
That's my concern.
There is no 4D chess game being played. It is implement tariffs and then use that as a way to get stuff that he wants.
Yeah,
but he doesn't even know what he wants half the time.
I know.
Yeah, it's bullying.
And so that's where I don't know, because there isn't really a solid plan that I'm seeing. It is just more bullying tactics. I don't know how long it's going to be around. I don't know if it's going to go up or down. And so I think until I see it on the shelf with a price tag, it's going to be hard to make that call. And same thing. I mean, that's why I kind of chuckled when you first brought up the tariffs, because that day it's like, hey, announced for $450.
Yeah.
And every meme that was going through the internet that day was the $600 Switch 2 because of the tariffs. So,
yep.
I don't know.
And
if I had a crystal ball, I could tell you, but
well, if you had a crystal ball, I hope we could get rich off of it somehow. But
that would be good. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's ludicrous. They have stopped the pre-orders for the United States and Canada right now because of the tariffs. Nintendo has.
Yep.
So they're not doing the pre-orders
that's because
right now.
I don't think they can, especially looking 2 months out. It's so volatile right now. We don't know what 2 months out looks like. And so for them to offer pre-order at one price and then have to renege on it and say, oh, whoa, it's going to cost us more than that to get it to you. Especially who pays the tariffs? Is this because it's, a Japanese company? Is it the Japanese tariffs? Is it because of where it's produced? Is it partially broken up between different areas of production? Are we paying for the chip tariffs? Are we paying for I don't know exactly how they're gonna work all this out. So they're
not.
I don't know. It's flux. Yeah,
that's the thing. There are not good faith actors working on this trying to solve a problem. So you could make the argument that we're going to try to reshore manufacturing or whatever for these various reasons. I was like, okay, but that's not what's going on. And so since there aren't good faith actors and they're not trying to hit a particular end goal, it's just chaos. That's all it is. We were joking. I was joking with a friend the other day because as soon as the Nintendo announcement and then the tariff announcement, and then of course Reddit blew up, right? And I was like, how wild would it be if it's like all the gamer nerds that rise up for the revolution because they tariffed our Nintendo Switch
because they can't get their Switch?
Yeah.
I mean, there's been things that have started for less than that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think it's probably going to be one of those cases where I have to wait for it to shake out. And we spoke about this before a little bit as well, but Nintendo's notorious for scarcity tactics.
Yeah, they do artificial scarcity a lot.
Yeah, so I figured for the Switch 2 is already going to be scarce. So I didn't even think it would be possible for me to get one for, at least the first 6 months to a year.
That was the third layer.
But now it's going to be that much harder.
Yeah, that was going to be the third layer of my pricing conversation with you, is we haven't even talked about scalpers yet.
No.
And so that's going to be very problematic. It's
for me, I was going to say, for me in my home, we got enough games to keep my kids busy for years into the future. If I gotta wait, then I'll wait. Like I said, the price point, the $450, feels fair. Again, hopefully the controllers are not even if they go up a little bit, as long as they don't break 100 for a set, I'll be okay with it. But it's going to be a bit. I don't imagine this shaking out very clearly anytime soon.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, why don't we talk about the games real fast? So, the first thing that I think we have to talk about again is the price. We're looking at $80, $90 games.
Yep.
And there is a lot of Discord's giving me my little thumbs up for some reason.
You're doing the thumbs up.
Is that what?
Well, your head was there. If you hold it up, then it starts to recognize it and do the symbols now.
There we go.
See, now it's not. There it goes.
Will it do a thumbs down?
Yes, it will.
We'll do that. I shouldn't do that.
Don't do that. I was gonna say I'm doing smiley faces. It's not doing that, but we'll see.
$80 for games, $90 for games, like that. That has been the people
I think that
complaining
has
the
been
most.
a long time. Well, but I think it's been a long time coming. It's about your media and just the time that takes to make the stuff versus what you get. And that's one of those weird things. When I was doing a bunch of mobile games, I had like family and friends. These are people that love me and care for me, complaining about having to spend 99 cents in an app store for the game, and were asking me why can't it be free, while at the same time they're dropping $2.50 for a soda at the gas station rather than going and buying it for less at the grocery store. It's like, okay, you're already spending that money as a consumer. You're taking something that's that I've been working on with a team for months and months, and you can't drop less than $1. And there's always been that disparity in value. Same thing. People go to a movie. They'll go to the movie theater. They'll watch it in theater. They'll not only pay for the tickets. Like my wife cannot watch a movie in the theater without getting the largest tub of popcorn they have and refilling it halfway through the film. Like, but they're dropping $40-$50 to take the family to see a movie. Then they buy it on DVD when it comes out, and probably 4K for an additional $30 that they watch twice, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a longer show, then you're talking 5 hours of entertainment total, the movie theater experience, and then once more watching it on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And then you've got games on the other side where people are putting in tons and tons of time and effort. And it's also different cost comparison. A movie, you bring in one A-list actor, that is the budget of the movie just shot. That's the millions. The games, we're not bringing in one A-list actor. It's literally all that money is going into regular, blue collar working guys that are just pouring their hearts into these things. And then people play them, dropping anywhere between 40 to 60 hours or more. I just finished a game that I think it was like 80 hours of gameplay, a bit at a time, because I don't have the time to do that all at once. And then we complain about the cost being a little bit more. And so I think for developers, that increase in the money is good, because it's been getting harder and harder to make games without a budget because we can't sell them. So I'm hoping that gamers are understanding and realizing the value they're getting for what they're paying. But I also understand where it's a frustration point. Sorry, I know I'm going. You just want to jump in.
No, I'm just like gamers understanding. What a wonderful fantasy world we live in. I agree. So I was talking to my class about this because I keep hearing this over and over. And like, as a teacher who teaches students that are in college, it's and younger, you see this all the time. You can just instantly tell as soon as you start talking, like they're just regurgitating what they've been hearing on the internet or from their favorite streamer or whatever. Like, and part of my responsibility as a teacher, that's why you keep me around, I think, Henry, is I'm trying to get them to think outside of just their normal day-to-day, something is expensive for me, and look at the strategic decisions that are being made by these companies and why they're being made. Like, why is the industry doing the things it's doing? And one of the things I brought up, I was like, look, if you inflation adjust, so 2005 is when we moved to kind of the $60 standard for games.
Yep.
If you inflation adjust for that, that's $98. So even at the $80 price point now, we're still $18 less on an inflation adjusted rate than we were at $60. So, like, we're actually still doing better dollar for dollar on games than we were 20 years ago. It just seems higher because it is higher. But if you look at the time value of money and all that, so that's a part of it. And I was like, I think we need to be really careful. To your point, we have been paying $60 for games, and then about 5 years ago, we kind of jumped up to 70 a little bit, 5 or 6 years ago. But still, I think the norm is kind of 60, with the outliers being 70 for like the big budget games. Even at $70 or $80, you buy a game that's 80, 100 hours. That's a pretty good deal, for your if you're just looking at time value. But the costs of games and the expectations from gamers have been going through the roof for years and years now. And you're just, unless gamers are willing to like roll back kind of their expectations on what a AAA game should be, or they're willing to pay more. I mean, there's really no way to solve that other than just increasing the cost, right? And the other thing that I mentioned is if we're gonna maybe in these dark times take a little gratitude in the world here, I think that we should feel gratitude that the games industry by and large has managed to find a number and then everybody sticks to that number. Like we just sort of universally agree that like, okay, this is going to be the number that we're going to do for $70 or $80 or whatever. Nintendo's pushing it now and other people will then match Nintendo's. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But there's a lot of other industries where like prices are all over the place. It's hard to compare price to quality because we just never know what you're really getting in other products. And so I think that the fact that everybody in the industry has been able to like kind of peel ourselves back, you know, your Call of Duties, they could easily probably be charging $100, $120 per game. And they, you know, the special editions and shit are all around. But I think we're in a good place in the fact that we kind of, as an industry, pick a number and we stick with it. Now, of course, you can argue that some games aren't worth $80. There are definitely broken, crappy games out there that are not worth the full $70 or whatever, and I think that's a conversation worth having. But maybe we should all take a little breath here. Like I realize that games are expensive, but
and that's just it. The same people that are complaining about the cost of games are also frustrated because they're not getting the games that they want. Because I hear that all the time. And they're also wondering, like, well, what happened to that studio? I really liked their last game. Well, this is directly related. If we're not paying more for the games, they have less funding to be successful. Also, they're more risk averse. They're making games on such a narrow margin that they can't explore the type of games that you would like to see. They've got to go for the safe bets, especially the larger the studio, the safer the bet. And so, without it going up, consumers aren't going to get what they want. And so it's people needing to understand that side of it as well. Yeah. You got to pay more if you want to get what you want, and you want to keep people in business.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. That's part of a larger conversation where our sort of AAA space is just, there's players that are so big that they need big hits. And so they don't do games that, you know, they're not going to spend $250 or $300 million on a game unless they're damn sure it's going to make that money back. They're
not going to do innovative. They're going to go, here's our safe model. We're never going to make X amount. As long as we can hit just a little bit more by doing something unique, then we're going to go. But it even hurts the smaller folks because you don't have the indie games going for the $80, and those are the ones that need it the most. They're still having to go for some of those indie prices, and so I'm hoping that jump with the regular games up to 80 will help the indie game prices go up as well to help out those indies that need the funding, that are just basically doing it, bootstrapping, begging people to purchase their games at that lower, $20, $10, $5, or in the case of my mobile games, like the 99-cent price that people couldn't understand. Why would I pay 99 cents for, 4 hours of gameplay?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that. No, I want to talk about that. But before we jump there, the other interesting thing Nintendo is doing with their pricing is that their physical games are $10 more, which is, I find very intriguing because on pretty much it's like the first kind of class I have, one of the things we talk about is the game economics is why is physical media the same price as digital? Shouldn't it be less because you're not manufacturing, you're not shipping, you're not going through customs and all that. And up until now, it hasn't been, but Nintendo they're putting a flag in the ground. They're like, physical games are going to be $10 more than their digital counterparts. Maybe not for every game, but for some of the ones they listed at their reveal. I thought that was a very intriguing. Obviously, they're trying to push people towards digital. This is probably part of a phased approach to get away from physical media entirely. But nobody else has done it. Nintendo did it.
No, and I think it's good. Well, the reason they haven't though is because they've been treating physical games as the loss leader. We've been in an industry where physical games used to be able to make tons of money. Like people got rich off of games. Sometimes off of their first title, like you could do it. And it's gotten to a point where the physical copies of the games, you're again working on such a narrow margin. That's why we started getting things like DLC. When you're only getting, 50 cents or $1 on a physical copy of a game that's sold, but then you sell your $10 DLC and you're making $6 to $8 off of that.
Sure.
Your DLC is what makes you the money. The game itself is the loss leader. And I think up until now, the digital game. Oh, sorry, Tom.
I was just say Tom also mentioned in chat that you do have to keep in mind any server side costs that might be associated with your game. So when you buy that game, it's a one-time purchase, but those server costs can go on for years.
Yeah. But there's also the digital side. Those digital copies that sold, those were wonderful because those helped you to maintain the business while you're still dealing with the loss leader of the physical game. So I think the prices of the physical going up is great. I think it's nice that they're lowering it a little bit for the digital, but then I'm also wondering where the companies are going to have that extra revenue to kind of cover the cost of the projects. Again, do they rely on DLC, or is there another approach that they're going to have to take to make up for the lost revenue?
Yeah. Well, I think games have been pretty shrewd over the past 5 to 8 years where they're not, you like that, sweetie? They're not doing that loss leading as much. The consoles certainly aren't. Consoles used to be sold at a loss and then they'd make it up on the back end through software sales. Yeah. That has not been the case.
And controller sales.
Yeah.
The controllers.
Their peripherals. That has not been the case for, 20 years, right? But that's how it used to be in the 80s and 90s. The other thing, too, I mentioned with my students is that whenever you're talking about purchasing of any product, it's not just consumer and creator. You have your distribution systems, your wholesalers, your retail sailors, and up until probably 2015, 2017, physical retail was sort of the king. And so a lot of these developers, and your platforms, if they were like, hey, we're going to come to the PlayStation and every game, if you buy it on the PlayStation Store, it's going to be $10 cheaper. Who's that going to piss off? That's going to piss off your Best Buys, your Walmarts, your Targets. And if you piss them off, they're just not going to sell any of your shit, And so there's sort of this, this tenuous thread that has been building over the past 10 years where the digital shops were undercutting the physical shops. And then we saw that with GameStop and Best Buy. You could actually buy digital codes of games at those stores. But now digital is just, for as far as game sales, it's overwhelmingly digital now. And so the leverage that these stores had is just evaporated. And so they can't push back on that. And you would not see a Nintendo or a PlayStation charging $10 more for a physical game a decade ago because Walmart would have lost their mind, and you can't afford to lose those sales. You need to be on the store shelves at a Walmart. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think also that, I was going to say that there was some trickery in there as well. For a while, I would go over to Meijer to buy my games because they were selling the Nintendo and PlayStation games for $5 to $10 cheaper than Walmart or any of the other places.
Best Buy had that games program where you could be part of the games club and you'd get, I think it was $10 off a game. They did that for a while. I think Amazon had something similar as well.
Yep. And so there were all those things already kind of happening where they were shifting prices to try and get people to buy the games from their place. But I think honestly, now Walmart would have more to lose by removing their game section and the media department than they would, by getting rid of it, being frustrated by Nintendo. Because whenever I take my kids to the store, if they're not there for something specific, like, hey, we got to get shoes or pants or whatever, we're grabbing some groceries, they wander over, and check out the games and the movies. And without that draw, my kids have no reason to wander around and make periphery purchases at the store. So the stores actually need that. However, places like GameStop is almost, I go in and they've got like a small section of games, but really it's the Funko Pop figurines. It's the, the other devices. It's all these other things that are periphery to the games. And so I think that's been going down for a while. And they also kind of got hurt because of some really bad practices with what they were doing with, the repurchases and then playing the games and then putting them out on the shelf. And there was a whole bunch of weird stuff that lost them a lot of people. But yeah, and then also just the rise of Amazon and the others. People are doing, even for physical games, they're doing digital purchases. If I go to the store and I don't see it on the shelf, I immediately go home and I buy it off Amazon. Sure. So I don't have to go store to store to store to see who happens to have a copy. I'll just go online. And so I think that's changed.
Dude, as well. On more than one occasion, I would have to drive around to multiple stores to get like the World of Warcraft update, which is interesting because that's a completely digital product, right? But you would have to go drive around and get the discs to do the updates for the expansions. I was going to say,
in 95 or 96, I think it was, I paid $60 for a used game, which was unheard of, but I found these kids that lived in my town had a copy of Final Fantasy II at the time. It was Final Fantasy IV, but in the States it was Final Fantasy II. And I had not been able to find a copy because, again, Nintendo and its limited release, the creation of scarcity. And at that point, they didn't have a really great way for you to buy used games or to find stuff. And so I dished out $60, and I was happy to do so just so I could get a copy of this elusive Final Fantasy II. And so, so the idea of paying $80 for a new game, nowadays, it's worth it.
Yeah. And so I want to kind of bring this all back to what you were mentioning about the app stores, because I think that time moves fast and we all get busy. Like, I think a lot of people forget how instrumental Nintendo still is to the industry and how there's certain touch points that just Nintendo has done that has shifted the entire industry in a direction. It's very similar to Apple. A lot of people rip on Apple for all these things, but they don't realize, like, over the past 40 years, Apple has made numerous decisions that oftentimes were made fun of. Remember when they got rid of their like CD drives and their laptops, and everyone was like, that's ridiculous or whatever. And then a couple years later, everyone got rid of their CD drives. Bluetooth, Apple pushed Bluetooth in a big way. So lots of little things, obviously, like the touch or the GUI interface, the iPhone, all that stuff, like obviously hugely instrumental. But Nintendo's the same thing. One of the ones that I talked to my class about is like Nintendo created the video game controller. Like every modern controller now is based off of the Super Nintendo controller. We added a couple extra shoulder buttons and, changed the form factor a little bit. But your PS5 controller and your Xbox Series X controller, minus like the touchpad and a couple changes, pretty much just straight up a Super Nintendo controller, So like, obviously that's a very big thing. But one of the things they did somewhat recently that we don't talk about is they busted the door open for premium app games. Remember they released, was it Mario Run? And I think it was $9.99 at release, I want to say. And at the time, I think Minecraft was on the App Store for like $10 or something. But other than that, there were like no games that were like $10 on the app stores for phones. And Nintendo was just like, we're going to do it. And once they did it, then you started to see more games come out at $2, $5, $8, because Nintendo has that kind of clout and they release good products, right? So that if you spend $10 on something, but that fundamentally changed people's perceptions of app store purchases in a way. And I think we're probably seeing that again with console games where Nintendo is just like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we think is right. And my guess is that the industry will follow in that.
Yeah. Well, and I think a big part of it is that Nintendo also hits standard gamers still in a lot of ways. Like the Wii definitely did that, where it just reached out and grabbed everybody who wasn't self-identifying as a gamer. But I think Nintendo still does that, because I will still run into people that are playing on their mobile phones, all day, every day, and will not identify as gamers. It's like, no, but you're playing all the time.
Yeah.
And they won't play regular consoles. I don't play computer games. Do you play the Switch? Oh yeah, me and my kids, we play the Switch, but I'm not a gamer. We only play for 6 hours a night. So I still think that's got power as well, where they're reaching audiences that the other game systems can't either.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think about, like, the iOS store is one of the largest gaming platforms in the world. Like, it's definitely one of the most revenue generating. And so, I think gamers kind of get stuck in that mentality, and then other people who aren't gamers, who sort of don't associate themselves with that kind of title or whatever, they're like, oh, I just play a game, like I play a game on my phone every day, this water sort game. I'm on level, where am I at here? I'm at level 2,657. So,
cool.
And that's just like a silly water puzzle game, but it's a game, and I play it daily. And I don't think a lot of people who are doing their Sudokus or their Candy Crushes or whatever kind of think of themselves as games, because they're not going to go and pick up a PlayStation 5 controller and play, the new Uncharted game or something. So that is something to keep in mind. Like the definition of gamer is very broad. So we are, April 9th? June 5th, I think, is the release date, excuse me, for the Nintendo Switch 2. You think we're going to have that date pushed back at all because of the tariff uncertainty? Do you think they're stuck with it?
It's going to depend on what happens. I think that, I don't know, if nothing changes, I would imagine they're going to push that back, at least for the US release, and they'll release all over the rest of the world just on schedule. I think that if something changes with the tariffs in the next month or two, then they may still push for that. But I think, or they may still be willing to push it through at a higher cost to kind of match the tariffs. But I think it's so in flux right now, they can't really calculate what it's going to cost to get it in. So I think until we get the tariff situation a little bit more settled, whether it stays or whether it gets removed, until it's settled, they're going to have a hard time doing a release. But that's just my thought. I could be completely wrong.
I am not a sophisticated owner of a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. But if I had to guess, I would think, because the United States is still the top purchaser, at least for now, of video games. And so if your largest market is acting like a petulant child and collapsing around you, how do you even begin? And now there's conversations, if you saw yesterday, South Korea, Japan, and China are looking to partner economically. Like we've driven South Korea and Japan away from our market into China's arms. Like this is fundamentally changing our world.
The thing is, you've got two economies there that are reliant on external sources. Japan cannot produce enough food and resources on its islands to be able to support itself. It's always at a negative. It has to rely on outside sources. And so if your partner, your biggest partner, is screwing you over and you suddenly can't feed your people because of it, or you can't, keep developing your products or doing anything else, you have to turn somewhere. Same thing for South Korea. Even though they're not an island, they're kind of isolated as one because of North Korea, and they're getting screwed the same way. So they have to turn to somebody. Who else are they going to turn to at this point?
Yeah. The other interesting thing too about both Japan and North Korea is that they are going through a population, kind of crisis, where they're not.
Yeah. Oh, you mean South Korea, or you said North Korea?
South Korea. South Korea.
Oh, I just wanted to double check.
yeah. South Korea. I think North Korea's got its own issues too, but no, South Korea and Japan are both going through population issues right now, which it makes it even harder, because if you don't have enough young folks that are participating in the economy, they're not able to subsidize the needs of the older folks, and so that just kind of compounds the issue that you were talking about. And so they have to go somewhere. And I think just generally as a thing, ignoring any of the like the political kind of ramifications, it's just like why punch your friends in the gut, right? Like why hurt your friends? I don't think we're ever. I was talking to somebody. Who was it? It was like 3 or 4 days ago. Oh, it was when it's at the protest we had here in Columbus on Saturday. Mm-hmm. I went there and I was chatting with some folks, and they were kind of talking. It was an older man, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. We are not going back. There is no return to the 90s or the 2000s. Like the world has broke. Trump has broke the United States, and he's in the process of breaking the world. And whatever it looks like after this is where we're going. Like we're just not going to return. And a significant portion of that breaking is that the rest of the world can no longer trust the United States. They can't trust them to have their back. They can't trust them militarily, and they certainly cannot trust them economically. And I think we are going to end up hurting in a very significant way. We, as in like the people, just normal folks like you and I, where we're going to need to get used to the fact that things are just going to cost more going forward, because these other companies are not going to bend over backwards anymore to provide us the deals and the incentives and the partnerships that they used to, because they can't trust that those will be held. And it sucks to say that.
Yeah.
And I always say this as a kind of, I don't mean anything by it, but like I don't have 7 children. I have a cat and a dog, and I sit in my apartment here, and like I don't make a lot of money. My net worth is not very high, but I'm sustainable right now, right? There's a lot of people who are not in my position that are really going to be struggling over the next couple of years. And pulling it back to video games, not that everything in the world involves video games, but
that kind of does.
At some point, and maybe you can answer this as somebody that has, you have 7 kids and a wife, so you're 9, right? You have to make strategic spending decisions on food, activities, vacations, schooling. Are you gonna be in a position? I don't mean you don't have to answer from your perspective, giving details, but just like you and folks like you. Are you going to be spending as much money on video games when you need to be putting that money elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, and to answer that, we already are minimizing a lot of that. We have to be very conscious about those decisions because, especially, after COVID and as the prices of everything goes up, food is what kills us. Just keeping my family fed, as frugal as we are, as much as we make everything homemade, we work with fresh ingredients, even the base things, just vegetables, meat, protein, like those things are going up at such an enormous rate that we already are making a lot of these decisions. We were already frugal before, and now it's getting even more so. We still, it's important to us for our mental health that we still allocate a little bit of money for some of these fun things. My kids being locked inside and not doing anything is no good. And so we pay for a zoo membership every year, and we'll do that. We'll buy a couple of games every year, but they've got to be really good or games that we can trust, either because of a brand. Like, if we get the Switch, I know that there's a couple of games in there that just because Nintendo did them will be of high enough quality that it's worth the purchase. But otherwise, I need to know somebody. I need to have a really good recommendation. But we have to limit what that is. Same with movies. We're at that point of figuring that out. And so in reality,
movies
with
at
our
movie
budget,
theater?
Less the theater, but even with that, like the $5 Tuesdays, our local cinema, we do that, but we still buy DVDs once in a while, just as kind of a family treat. just to have like a movie night. And we have some streaming services, but honestly, it's not the media that's killing us right now. And if we removed the media, it wouldn't remove that much. Our media consumption for a month is about the cost of two of the meals with my family. Because the streaming services, even them combined, is not that much. The Nintendo thing, even though we do the family Nintendo account, I think it's like $80 a year. You break that down month by month, it's not that much. It's less than $10 a month for that subscription.
Yeah.
And so all told, we're not spending a ton on media. And so I think anywhere, we may get to a point where we have to cut out that last little bit, that one game or that one streaming service here or there or whatever. But really, it's the bigger issues that we're dealing with. It's the, oh crap, is my grocery bill going to jump another $200 next month? As hamburger prices go from $4.50 a pound and jump to $5.50 a pound, and I got a lot of teenagers and they go through a lot of food. So yeah, that's the bigger concern. Less the video games. But yeah, it's possible that we'll have to cut back even more.
Yeah, so after we wrap up here in a couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead to Kroger and get some groceries, and I'm kind of curious if the tariffs are going to be reflected in the prices yet for things. So I'm going to check that out. Henry, it is as always
glad to see the egg prices drop this week. I was going to say we buy 7.5 dozen eggs each week. And it had jumped up to, like I said, teenagers. But it was like $40 a couple weeks ago, and now it's back down to like 35, 32, something like that. It was yesterday. So I'm happy to see that at least dropping again, but it gets bad.
Well, I would like everything to drop, obviously, but that's not where we are. So Henry, let's go ahead and wrap it up here real fast before we close. I want to do like a little personal thing. So some of you might be aware we are located in Ohio. I have been considering running for U.S. Senate to replace J.D. Vance's seat next year in the special election. So J.D. Vance was elected. He served for 2, became vice president. John Husted is in that spot for 2 years. And then next year, the special election finishes out his 2 years. So I'm debating running for Senate. I am not, legal note, I'm not officially a candidate. I am not soliciting for donations or votes or anything. But I do have a Blue Sky if you want to follow me. And I've got, I just changed it. I think it's Facebook. Let me see. I should have been prepared for this. I just changed it yesterday. So let me see if Facebook.com/Volpe for America will take you to my political page. And then I'm going to have my Blue Skies currently like at the Volpe, but I'm going to change that to Volpe for America as well, I think. But if anybody's interested in just kind of following me on that little journey adventure, then you can find me there. Again, not an official candidate. I'm still kind of just talking to people and seeing what's going on, but just wanted to let folks know who may be watching. This is April 9th, 2025. So yeah, Henry, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been episode 60 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Of course, we are on every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/the GDEX. I'm actually considering maybe moving to YouTube. So let me know if anybody has preferences between Twitch and YouTube. I don't really have strong preferences. It just seems like it might be easier to keep everything in one place since we post these videos up every week as well on YouTube. So you can go back and watch the old ones. I'm in the process of transitioning from the GDEX into the Sandbox.Space's own space. So I am trying to move, the 60 videos we have over to that. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm trying. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Again, I am your host, Chris, joined by Baby, who has been giving me the eyes because she wants treats for treat time. Like for the past 20 minutes, she looks like she's about to explode. Pumpkin is over there. And of course, our special guest this week was Henry Bawden, who has his new book out, and they can get that on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, if they can also just check it out at my website, www.bawdenstudio.com. And if they go there, it's got links to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google, all that stuff.
Awesome.
But the hard and soft cover go live for purchase on April 25th. So just over 2 weeks.
Yeah, awesome. So again, thank you all for watching. It has been a wonderful conversation, Henry, and we will see you next week.
See ya.